Welcome to my world, where you will experience an atmosphere of love, relevant subjects, and motivation. So let's talk about things that matter. What matters to you matters to me.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Catherine Toon, and welcome to the Brother Henry and You show. Brother Henry, it is an honor to co-host today. We have a really fascinating topic, and that is the topic of gaslighting. I don't know how many of you have heard the term of gaslighting, but it is a real phenomenon that is recognized in the psychological communities, and many people have suffered from it, and there's things that you can do about it. So this is going to be part one in a three-part series, so I hope you take the opportunity to glean from all three, because there's really valuable information. I guarantee you that if you've not suffered from this phenomenon, you know people that have. And as people who are lovely people called to love, we're also called to be free for ourselves, and then also called to love and help set others free. And, you know, knowledge is power, and understanding these things that are going on is power. If this is powerful, and if this is you, there is freedom. And if this is someone else that you know, there is freedom. So let's dive in and unpack this. So today we're going to basically talk about gaslighting. What is it? Okay. And where did it come from? So I'm just going to read you sort of the psychological definitions, and then we're going to unpack it together. Okay. It says gaslighting is a form of psychological abuse where a person or group makes someone question their sanity, perception of reality, or memories. People experiencing gaslighting often feel confused, anxious, and unable to trust themselves. Okay. So it's psychological abuse, and it can happen with a person or a group of people, an institution, that causes you to question yourself, question your sanity, your perception of reality, or your memories. And, you know, being questioned is good, but being manipulated to counter what you know to be true inside is incredibly unhealthy, right? You know, God is in you, Christ is in you, and his spirit is one with you. And in that place of your oneness, God leads you into all truth. And he wired you to have a relationship with yourself so that you can discern things. You can discern, you know, is this a godly thing? Is this an evil thing? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? You know, we are still in a fallen world where evil things do happen, and we need to be able to function in a way that there's safety, there's peace, and there's freedom. Let me continue with some other ways of wording it that will help you get a handle on this for you or someone else. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation. Remember, that's a big word, manipulation, in which a person or group covertly, so a lot of times it's not obvious, but it's covert, sows seeds of doubt in a targeted individual or group. Okay, so it's sneaky, all right? Making them question their own memory, perception, or judgment, often invoking in them cognitive dissonance and other changes, including low self-esteem. Let me unpack what this cognitive dissonance is. It's a really good word. It's just kind of, hey, you're smart. You can get this. Cognitive dissonance. Cognitive just refers to your cognition, which is your mental processes, how you think. Okay, so how you think. And then dissonance, that means stuff does not match up. So on the inside, you're saying, this is wrong, this is freaky, but you're being told, no, this is good, and this is righteous, and this is could be God. That would be a form of spiritual abuse, right? So inside, you're saying, no, bad, bad, and then someone else is saying, no, this is love, or this is righteous or godly, or this is right. And so you're at war with yourself. You're at dissonance with yourself. So your mind is saying, your heart's saying one thing, the inner man is saying one thing, and your mind is saying another thing, and you're at war. That's why it's, a nation divided against itself cannot stand. And so you just have a hard time standing. So that leads to that low self-esteem. Okay, and then we'll unpack this a little more. It says using denial, misdirection, contradiction, and misinformation. Gaslighting involves attempts to destabilize the victim and delegitimizes the victim's beliefs. So inside you're saying, I believe that I should have my own personal space, and that, a trusted member of the family or a trusted person should honor me. And so if you're being manipulated in, say, sexual abuse or emotional abuse, or to give your money, or to be manipulated to do things, and you're saying there's something wrong with this, but they're saying this is love, this is godly, right? You're being delegitimized, you're being undermined, right? You're being misdirected, contradicted, or given misinformation, okay, in order to accomplish someone else's agendas, right? Instances can range from denial by the abuser, just flat out, no, didn't happen, right? So you remember something happening, no, that really happened, no, it didn't happen. It's like, but, right? And you just get that confusion, right? So instances can range from the denial by an abuser that previous abusive incidences occurred, to belittling the victim's emotions or feelings. Well, that's stupid. Well, you always dramatize things. You always make things up. This is implanted in you by a counselor, right? You're just imagining things, right? To staging bizarre events by the abuser with the intention of disorienting the victim. Okay, so these are hefty. We're going to be unpacking this in a lot more detail in terms of what it looks like in part 2. But let's talk about where the term gaslighting came from. Okay, so the term gaslighting can be traced back to a 1938 play. It was a British play, but it became sort of popularized in Hollywood with the film called Gaslight. You can actually see this movie, and it is brilliant at depicting this. It is so good. I really recommend it. I love this film. It's got Ingrid Bergman in there, who's like a phenomenal actress, and she's being gaslighted by her husband. And I'm not going to spoil the whole movie, but basically, her husband, who says he loves her, is up to nefarious activities. And so she's being told she's loved and all that kind of thing. And then he leaves her every night to do these nefarious activities. And when these nefarious activities happen, the gas light that was literally the lighting, because this is a period piece where lighting was done by gas, would dim, and she would hear noises, and she would think she's going crazy, because she's hearing them in her own house, and she's like something's going on, and she's trying to tell this to her husband, and he's saying she's crazy, she's imagining, she can't, trust her own feelings, and the more he's denying her reality, and then she starts to question herself. She thinks she's crazy, right? And it's this whole plot that he's manipulating and controlling her. He's gaslighting her to control her because of his agenda. And so I'm not going to tell you how the movie ends, but I really recommend you do it, because you can see this unrolling. So this beautiful, sane, powerful woman who has so much to offer to the world is being belittled, and she becomes a smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller version of herself. She's questioning her own perceptions, like the light is dimming, but no, it's not really dimming, so I'm crazy, right? And I'm hearing these noises, but these noises aren't really happening, but I'm hearing, and so she's in this cognitive dissonance, right? And she's literally being controlled by this person. No, you're crazy. And he starts making it a personal attack. And, so her self-esteem starts to plummet. She starts to get fearful. She's also isolated. Also, a lot of times in gaslighting situations, the person is isolated, because isolated people are easier to control, right? Because they don't have external connections, right? And they don't have people to validate them externally. No, you're really not crazy, right? So she starts to hear noises and have the gaslight. So that was gaslighting. It's really fascinating. And start to question her reality. So her husband is, whose name is Gregory, convinces Paula that it's all inside her head, that she's really crazy, right? So that her own ability to perceive reality is not even present. So it does end happily. I'm always for happy endings, but it's a great kind of thriller movie, and it absolutely personifies and brings flesh to the concept of this type of psychological manipulation and abuse. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out how much I want to go into this next one. So, I'll dive in a little bit, and we can pick it up next time. So what does gaslighting look like, right? We'll start some of that. So it involves someone, there's various techniques that a person who gaslights another person uses. They may counter. That means a person questioning someone's memories or someone's perception. They may say things like, "You never remember anything accurately," or "Are you sure?" It's like, well, am I sure? Am I remembering? Am I making this up? Right? You have a bad memory, right? And, if you tell people long enough, they start to believe it, particularly people in places of authority. We tend to believe that, right? So, for me personally, when I was growing up, we had incest, we had just serious abuse. And when I finally confronted my abuser literally said, "A counselor just put that in your head." And I'm like, no, I don't think so. Until I got it really settled in myself, I would start to question myself. Well, maybe he did. Maybe I am making it all up. Right? A lot of times when you're with someone who gaslights, you feel crazy. I mean, I finally recognize this phenomenon. It's like, the crazy person is making me feel crazy. I'm not crazy, but I had to get enough healing and wholeness in myself so that I could recognize, wait a second, that's not my issue. That is not me. Okay. It's the pot calling the kettle black. Or actually, it wasn't even the pot calling the kettle black. It was the pot calling the what's white, the cloud black. I wasn't black, but he was projecting that on me, right? So that was a countering, just flat out, no, didn't happen. You're crazy, right? Withholding. So withholding is when someone refuses to engage in a conversation. So a person using this technique may pretend they didn't hear you. They may pretend not to understand, right? So they don't have to respond, right? So they're not willing to engage. So they can say, well, I don't know what you're talking about, or you're just making that up, or you're just trying to confuse me. Well, no, I'm confronting you on something that really happened, and they're just not willing. So they're diffusing it and withholding and withdrawing from the conversation so they don't have to be confronted. They can trivialize. This is a very common one. So this occurs when a person belittles or disregards the other person's feelings, right? So they may accuse them of being, you're just oversensitive. You just make things up. You just are over dramatic. You just overreact, right? When there are valid concerns and feelings. So I had a client, actually it wasn't a client, it was actually a patient at the time because I was in the ER. I was moonlighting in the ER, and this little boy came in, and it was horrible. He had literally a dog had attacked his face. So it was nasty. And the only thing this little boy was worried about is how his dad was going to react. It was so upsetting. You could tell it was such an abusive situation because the concern was that you're overreactive. You did this wrong. And these are valid. Listen, when a dog bites my face, it is valid, right? But when I'm being accused of being over dramatic or sensitive, or I'm in trouble because I mishandled the dog, instead of, honey, let's take care of your face. Let's figure out what to do with the dog. That little boy was being gaslighted about the validity of his feelings. I had another client as a boy who broke his arm, and he was supposed to be mowing the lawn, and instead of saying, "Oh no, you hurt your arm," let's get it fixed, let's get it taken care of, and oh, by all means, don't mow the. No, they said he was trivializing it, so the little boy mowed the entire lawn with a broken arm because his predicament was being trivialized. So he had this cognitive dissonance of, my arm really hurts. I think there's something wrong with it. No, you're just blowing it. You're just making it, right? So he was being gaslighted, right? And it's so tragic. So I'm going to call it quits for part one of gaslighting. And then we're going to pick it up next time for gaslighting part two. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you, Brother Henry, for allowing me to share. And I hope you guys have an amazing day. Okay, well, hello, everybody. This is Catherine Toon, and welcome to the Brother Henry and You show. And I am a co-host doing a series, part two, on gaslighting. And so we got into part one earlier. If you didn't get a chance to look at it, I recommend you do it. It will make this one a whole lot make a lot more sense. Yeah. So let's talk about what it is really briefly, and then I'm going to go through what does it look like, and that's a really big portion of this. So what is it? Gaslighting is a form of psychological abuse where a person or group makes someone question their sanity, perception, or reality or their memories. Yeah. People experiencing gaslighting often feel confused, anxious, and unable to trust themselves. So last time we kind of delved into specifically about what it is and where the term came from. I recommended the movie Gaslight to see this in full play. It's a great movie. It's an older one, but it's a great one. So last time, other than talking about what it looks like, we ended up talking about how it develops, and we talked about countering. So you say, this happened, and they say, no, it didn't happen, and you feel crazy, right? Withholding, that's when someone refuses to actually engage in a discussion. So you say, this happened, and someone says, I don't know what you're talking about, or you're just trying to confuse me or something, but they're not willing to engage in a conversation about it. Or trivializing. You said, this happens, and they say, oh, you make such a big deal of it. You're oversensitive. They invalidate your feelings. Okay. So let's continue. We have three more ways that this tends to happen, where you're made to feel that you're invalid. And the other one's just a flat out denial. So denial involves a person pretending to forget events or how they occurred. They deny that they said or did something, or accuses someone of making things up. So this is what happened to me as I had confronted an abuser with incest. They said, well, a psychologist just put that in your mind. It never happened. Right. And I'm like, it did happen. And right. And, but it tends to make you feel crazy. My litmus test for gaslighting is like, is this person making me feel crazy? Right. Because a lot of times crazy people will make you feel crazy. Right. Now, that's not that, you can't have your own craziness. So you take that between you and the Lord. But when your inside says, this really happened, and someone's saying it didn't happen, that is classic gaslighting. Diverting. So this is a technique where someone changes the focus of the discussion. Look at the bird, squirrel, right? And questions the other person's credibility instead of this happened or this didn't happen, you said this or you didn't say this. It's all about your credibility, right? For example, they might say, that's just another crazy idea you got from your friends. In my case, that's a crazy idea you got from your counselor, right? In this dynamic, when it can also look like using something the victim has done to divert from taking responsibility for what they've done. So you confront someone, it's like, man, that was I don't know, that was not a love pat. That was like really abusive. I have bruises and welts. And then they say, well, look at the time when you blah, 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 blah. Well, and that's not that there might not be something that you did do. But the point was, did they use physical violence? Was that violence? Or right? So it's just a diversion tactic. Another thing that the gaslighter may do is to stereotype. So a person using gaslighting techniques may intentionally use negative stereotypes of a person's gender, race, ethnicity, sexuality, nationality, or age to manipulate them. So if someone is, a child, they'll say, well, you're just a child. What do you know? Or if someone is, female, they may say, well, you're just hysterical, right? Or any other type of gender, race, ethnicity. They may tell, for example, They may tell the person that they're irrational or crazy. So, I mean, you do realize that the word hysteria, the base word for hysteria is the word hys, which is the word womb. And so women, and this is not like, getting my burning my bra moment, but I'm just saying women were considered hysterical because they had wombs. Okay. A hysterectomy is a removal of the womb. And it was felt that the women's hysteria would wax and wane with the moon. Okay. They had all this bizarre stuff in the psychological literature that was a stereotype to gaslight women. Okay. And that's just an example. There's other examples too, for the guy genders too. So you guys, we're on your side too. We're on everybody's side. Okay. Okay. So those are ways that it may manifest. It may look like. So it's especially common in intimate relationships. Often evolves over time. So a lot of times it starts out subtle and then builds. So you're like, it's kind of like the frog that's getting boiled alive, but it starts in, cool water, and then slowly the temperature increases till they're being boiled alive. All right. And you think you're crazy, right? So it's often gradual. So an abusive partner may accuse someone of being irrational, crazy in order to isolate them. Isolation is a very common tactic that they may isolate them to undermine their confidence, and it makes it easier to control someone. So I have a client who literally married a drug abusing, manipulative, gaslighting spouse. And she was literally taken to the country where there was practically nobody around. And she was generally a pretty confident person, but in the place where he was like using all her money, he'd force her to work, and then he'd take all the money and spend it on drugs, and then call her crazy and call her stupid, and call her like she was like, you're just hysterical. And she had no one outside to say, wait a second, this is not passing the sniff test here, right? A lot of times if you feel crazy, you might want to check if there's someone trying to make you feel crazy. And then if you feel, generally you could be crazy. So talk to the Lord about it and get some external perspective. We're going to talk about what to do in part 3. Okay. So, for example, someone in their isolation in this intimate context may continuously tell someone you're forgetful, until the person believes, yeah, I'm just always forgetful. I just don't remember things right. I always am making things up, right? And you start to second guess yourself. Okay. Often when there's an imbalance of power in child-parent relationships. So abusive caregivers may use gaslighting to shame their children, to control their children, to accuse them of being too sensitive or to belittle their feelings, or accuse them of misremembering events when they were younger. Okay, I talked about that my testimony, what happened with me in a gaslighting in my situation, right? Where I was basically told, no, you didn't remember that, right? You're just a child that was put in your head, right? There's medical gaslighting. I'm sorry, folks, I practice medicine, but it happens. Medical gaslighting occurs when a doctor or medical professional dismisses or trivializes a person's health concerns based on the assumptions that they are mentally ill, right? They may tell their person that their symptoms are in their head. Okay. This really happens. You know what I mean? Don't assume that it's in people's head. Now, some of the stuff can, but just do not assume, right? Take someone seriously. A 2009 study found that doctors were twice as likely to contribute coronary heart disease symptoms in a middle-aged woman to mental health conditions versus middle-aged men. And just so you know, coronary artery disease a lot of times will present in atypical ways in middle-aged women, older women. So it's not the classic stuff. So it's easier to say, it's just in your head. You're just making it up. Oh, you're just kind of anxious. Take a chill pill, whatever that is. And I can definitely vouch for that. And it's tragic when something is saying, it's in your head, and then it turns out to be real. And that person suffered or maybe had some really negative fallout because someone wouldn't believe them. Okay. This situation of not being believed is really, really horrible, right? There's racial gaslighting. Okay, so according to an article in Politics, Group, and Identities, racial gaslighting occurs when people apply gaslighting techniques to a group of people based on race or ethnicity. Okay, so for example, a person may deny that a specific group experiences discrimination despite evidence that says otherwise, or they might criticize civil rights activists for being too emotional to undermine their message. The truth is that, until you've walked in someone else's experience, you really don't know. You really don't know. And so this is why it's so important to listen to people, and it gets complicated because sometimes we don't always respond. I'll just speak as a woman, so I'll do that because, my race is, Caucasian, and that tends to not have so many issues, right? So I'll speak as a woman. So being a woman, and I'm saying, this really happened, and you're being, you're just being blown off. Now, if I behave badly in my, start burning my bras and, telling everybody and every man they're a male chauvinist pig and, all this kind of stuff, well, I kind of lose my message. But, that doesn't mean that there's not some validity to it. So we need to be able to weed through the issues, okay? So unless we're on the receiving end of someone's experience, we can't tell someone's experience that they're full of crap, okay? It's important that we have empathy for that. Okay, this one's a big one. I am laughing. There's political gaslighting. As I record this, there's a lot of political fallout going on, right? An article in a forthcoming issue of Buffalo Law Review states that political gaslighting occurs when a political figure or group uses lies, denials, or manipulates information to control people. I've seen that on both ends of the spectrum, by the way. Examples include downplaying, hiding things that their administration has done wrong, discrediting political opponents based on mental instability, or using controversy to divert attention from important events. We can see this on both sides. So that's all I'm saying about that. There is institutional gaslighting. According to the article in the Journal of Perinatal and Neonatal Nursing, institutional gaslighting can occur at a company or organization. The organization may deny or hide information, lie to employees about their rights, or portray whistleblowers who uncover problems in an organization as incompetent or mentally ill. I can speak to this. I was the whistleblower when I was practicing medicine. I was actually a really good doctor, and I was kind of a whistleblower. And my heart was not to get anybody in trouble. My heart was to say, oh my goodness, look at this. We missed this. The patient had a negative effect. Let's get better. Let's be better. Let's do better. It was not well received. Instead, as the junior physician, it was blown off, right? And I was blown off, right? So I was considered, whatever, troublemaker. Instead of saying, what, there's a real issue. We need to come up to the plate here, right? The National Domestic Violence Hotline indicate that a person experiencing gaslighting may feel confused and constantly second guess themselves. This is really big. You feel crazy, right? You start to doubt your own perceptions of how things happen. You find it difficult to make simple decisions. Why you're second guessing yourself all the time. Find it frequently question if they're too sensitive, probably because they're being told they're too sensitive, right? Become withdrawn or unsociable, right? You're second guessing yourself. You turn inward. Constantly apologize to the abusive partner. Oh my goodness, I would apologize and I'd apologize about my apology. It was so bad. I don't do that anymore. I'm happy. Defend the abusive person's behavior, right? Lie to family and friends to avoid having to make excuses for their gaslighter's abusive behavior. They feel hopeless, joyless, worthless, or incompetent, right? So that is how gaslighting can present itself. Next time, we are going to talk about what causes gaslighting and yay, what to do about it, because there is vast hope. If this is you, there is vast hope for you. There is freedom for you. There was freedom for me. So so stay tuned. Okay. And join in for part 3. Thank you, Brother Henry, for the opportunity to share. And I hope everybody, you have a great day. Well, hello, everybody. This is Catherine Toon, and welcome to the Brother Henry and You show. Thank you, Henry, for the honor of being a co-host. And today we are going to finish out the series on gaslighting. So this is gaslighting part 3. And we're going to focus on what causes it and, hallelujah, what to do about it. So if you have been following along, you see that this is a very serious thing. If you haven't watched part 1 and part 2, you're going to want to do that so that you can really get a good handle on it. Just as a little recap, let's talk about gaslighting. It's a form of psychological abuse where a person or group makes someone question their sanity, perception of reality, or memories. So it's a serious issue, but it also is one that that's overcomable, right? People experiencing gaslighting often feel confused, anxious, and unable to trust themselves. And we talked about a lot of the different ways that someone who gaslights you or an institution that gaslights you, they use different ways of manipulation to get you to question basically your reality, your sanity, your perceptions. Yes. And the term gaslight came from the movie Gaslight, which I recommend you watch. It's great and it's powerful. So part 3, what causes it and what do we do about it? Well, gaslighting can cause anxiety and depression, psychological trauma, especially if it's in a pattern of wider abuse. So a lot of times gaslighting is associated with other kinds of abuse. And because they're trying to hide up and control and manipulate you, so there can be emotional abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, spiritual abuse, right? Causes, according to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, gaslighting occurs because someone wants to gain control over someone else. It is the behavior someone learns by watching others. So oftentimes it's been modeled to you, and then you operate out of that modeling. An abusive person may feel they're entitled to control other people, or that their feelings or opinions matter most. So my feelings and opinions matter, yours don't matter, and if they do, not as much as mine, okay? Some abusive people also have personality disorders, such as narcissistic personality disorder. I know Brother Henry has talked on this quite a bit. Many people use the term narcissist to describe a self centered or vain person. But while anyone can have narcissistic traits, um, people with true narcissistic personality disorder have long term symptoms such as a constant need for attention and admiration, a belief that they're special or better than everyone else. So I'm special, more special than you, I'm better than you, and a lack of empathy. They just can't feel what the other person feels. Those are classic narcissistic traits that are long term and ongoing and widespread versus just having, just a few traits to have an actual disorder. Those are longer term and broader. So, usually the causes will be because of a need to control, and a need to a feeling that they're entitled and that they matter and other people don't, right? So I can do this to you and then tell you it didn't happen, or that you're crazy, or that it doesn't matter, or that you don't matter, or that, well, you know how forgetful you are, and all the different things that we discussed last time. And a lot of times it's in the context of other forms of abuse, right? And so if there is sexual abuse happening, if there is emotional abuse happening, if there is physical abuse happening, well, the abuser wants to control the other person. And one really good way to do that that's effective, at least in the short term, is to make the person think they're crazy or that it doesn't matter, or that you don't matter, or that it's okay, or that it didn't really happen. All those different things that we talked about in the second part of the series. So I want to really get on to most importantly, how to respond. So you realize, oh my goodness, I might be gaslighted, and you start to question yourself and all those different things. How do you respond? Or someone that's like, this is crazy, right? Okay. So gaslighting has a significant impact on mental health. So it is essential for people who experience gaslighting to make sure they basically seek help, right? Um, Really important. Gather some evidence, right? Gather some evidence that will remind you or help the other person be reminded that they're not imagining things. They're not crazy, right? This evidence can become useful later if a person decides to pursue legal action, right? The domestic violence hotline offers ideas of how to gather proof. These include keeping a secret diary. Okay. So this allows the person to track events, including date, time, and details. So this is fresh in your memory. This happened. This is when it happened. This is how it happened. All of that. Date, time, how it happened. Talking to a trusted family member, friend, or counselor. This is really important because very often those that are getting gaslighted are isolated. So you're with yourself, you're being gaslighted, and you're questioning your own sanity, your own perceptions, your own ability to interpret reality. And so talking to someone else, getting out of that isolation in whatever way, it helps people gain an outside perspective on the situation. Am I crazy? Or if someone smacks me across the face, so and I hit the wall, is that normal? Right? And they're saying it didn't happen, or they're saying it doesn't matter, or they're saying I deserved it, or whatever, right? It'll help you gain some outside perspective on the situation to create an external additional record of information. So it helps to gain some validation. Or maybe to say, well, that maybe was a little bit over the top. Maybe that doesn't happen. That's not, but right there, that's something, right? And so that helps gain some perspective. Taking pictures. This can help someone fact check their memories and remind themselves that they're not imagining things. So if someone is controlling you with violence and they broke a chair or something, well, and they're saying, no, it didn't happen, or it's not that big of a deal, or whatever, take a picture of the broken chair, take a picture of the bruises, right? Because this gives you, wait a second, that chair was broken. I'm not crazy. Or those bruises, really did happen. And so I'm not crazy there. And oh my goodness, someone else thinks that it actually matters, right? Keeping voice memos. Using a cell phone or device to describe events as a quick way for someone to record something that just happened in their own words. And it says here, always check state laws on recordings before using them in court. The biggest issue here is for you to confirm your own validity in your perceptions, right? Because you may need to make decisions based on that. And that brings us to the next part, staying safe. It's vital that someone who lives with an abusive person make sure they gather proof, but that proof is private, and that they erase their search history after looking up information on gaslighting and abuse. Because if someone is abusive and gaslighting, they're not going to be happy that you watched this, okay? You'll want to delete the history of that. A person should store evidence in a hidden location, maybe buy a second phone or a cheap voice recorder, keep devices locked away, send records to a trusted individual so that the person can delete personal copies. So you could email it to someone and then delete it, okay? Create a safety plan, which includes ways to protect yourself from physical and emotional abuse before, during, and after leaving a relationship or situation. According to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, a safety plan can include safe places and escape points, the contact details of someone who could be called upon to help, self-care activities that help someone to cope, and a plan for safety for leaving the abusive situation. If someone is gaslighting you, let me be clear. That is abuse, and it's not okay. It's violating your boundaries as a person to validate your own internal reality and your sanity and your mental health. Okay, not okay. When to seek help. So according for the recommendations for the CDC, in domestic relationship, acts of emotional abuse such as gaslighting tend to occur along other types of abuse. So over time, it can escalate to domestic violence, to physical violence. Anyone who believes they're experiencing abuse from a partner or family member should seek support. You cannot go this alone. You seek support, and you deserve support where there's, and it's available. A person can contact domestic abuse organizations for advice and help with creating that safety plan. For the mental health of gaslighting, a person may find it helpful to talk confidentially to a therapist that has experience in helping people in abusive relationships. So with that, I have a bunch of contact information that I will give to Brother Henry to provide for you. If this is something that where do I go? Where do I go to get that help? The truth is that if you're being gaslighted, you are being minimized and you are being abused. And chances are, if that continues, it will just get worse. People who violate your boundaries like that will tend to increasingly up the ante. And you owe it to yourself, you owe it to the people who love you, and you owe it to the rest of the world who needs to see you flourishing and prospering and contributing to seek the help you need. Gaslighting is real, but it is overcomable. I'm a case in point, and I'm a happy camper, and I'm not put up with that mess. but it may take a while for you to be able to get there from here, or to help someone else get there who's ready for it. If someone's not ready, they're not ready, and you can't make them ready. But when they're ready, you can be a resource as well. I hope this has been a blessing for you today. Share this with someone who needs it. Thank you, Henry, for allowing me to contribute. And I so appreciate you. And as always, have an amazing day.
Hi, if you like what you've seen today, be sure to connect with Brother Henry at www.facebook.com/The Brother Henry and You Show. And also be sure to check out and subscribe to his YouTube channel, which is www.youtube.com/Henry Harris 100. We hope that this has been a blessing to you, and we hope to hear from you soon. Keep watching, because what matters to you matters to Brother Henry.